Update. I ruined my perfect family when my wife caught me cheating with my boss and went to prison. Now, 7 years later, she's out, and I'm all alone with my kids hating me. I didn't know she was married. She never wore a ring, never once said anything. It made me feel even more terrible. Leading to the trial, my boys stayed with their grandparents on my wife's side, and my girls refused to talk to me. My ex didn't want to see me as well. I tried to visit her at county, and I was denied. My sister made sure my ex went to the correctional facility she was working at so she could keep an eye on her. When I asked my sister if she could relay a message for me, she told me to go to hell. During the trial, it was the first time in months that I saw her. She looked at me with such anger. It hurt more than anything I could ever imagine. She always looked at me with love even when we were mad at one another. But during that trial, it was hate. I needed to excuse myself so I could cry in the restroom. As the days went by, I was forced to recount my affair and every detail for all to hear. When I told them how long it was, my ex looked crushed, and my mother stood up and walked out of the courtroom. During my ex's testimony, I learned that she came home to surprise me with lunch and a weekend trip for two to the Catskills. She had a full romantic getaway planned, only to walk in on us, and she reacted. She stated that when the AP ordered her to step aside, she snapped and beat her, only stopping when she tossed me off her. She quickly called 911, and we heard the recording at court. Hearing the pain in her voice, her sobs as she did what the operator told her to do, it was so crushing. The AP couldn't verbally testify and was heavily medicated, so they used images of what she looked like, which turned my stomach because I was responsible for all this. My ex smashed her eye socket, cheekbones, and destroyed her jaw. They stated that there were bone fragments too small to piece together. My ex was charged with a third-degree felony and sentenced to 7 years, which caused my sons to shout and protest and my daughters and her family to let out a wail that haunts me to this day. That first 3 months was torturous. I was sued by my AP's soon-to-be ex-husband for alienation of affection. My ex filed for divorce. My eldest moved out. My other son stayed in his room, and my twins were rebelling hard. My eldest moved out. My other son stayed in his room, and my twins were rebelling hard. My former brother-in-law attacked me in the middle of Price Chopper, and her father spat in my face when I tried to apologize to him. My mother and sister refused to speak to me. Eventually, I needed to find a new job. There was no money coming in, and I nearly went through the savings, but I was pretty much blacklisted in my field. It was bad publicity for the accounting firm, so I started working in retail and worked as a seasonal H&R Block adjuster during the tax rush. I almost lost the house. My ex refused to allow me to visit her, and every letter was returned. Crying in the shower became an almost daily occurrence. My parents almost separated because my father constantly defended me. My sister refused to acknowledge me. Even my friends, who I had known since grade school, were divided. Soon, I began to have thoughts of ending things, of picking up my belongings and disappearing. The guilt was so heavy. Eventually, I saw a therapist, and she scolded me. She told me that I just got comfortable with my ex. I didn't see her as a wife. I saw her as a friend with benefits, and I treated her as such. She's right. I did. I got too comfortable with her. I saw her as a companion, yet she saw me as her husband, the father of her children, the man she loved and desired. I took her for granted. Almost a year went by, a year of silence from my children. When I cooked dinner, they would collect their food and go to their rooms, refusing to even look at me. I did have a few meltdowns, begging them to say something to me, but nothing. My sister got married, and I wasn't invited, but my kids were. I continued to try to visit my ex in hopes that she placed me on the visitor list, but I was always denied. My letters were still being returned. It made me severely depressed, and I knew I deserved it. Then one day, out of the blue, my sister showed up. I was shocked to see her unhappy. This was the first time since the trial that she came to my house, and she just came to scold me. She told me that my ex was in the infirmary after getting stabbed. An inmate tried to S her in her cell, resulting in my ex getting stabbed in her stomach and the inmate getting his spine broken. My sister screamed at me, "You did this," before going back to her truck. I cried for days after that because she was right. I did this. I tried to visit her at the infirmary, and I was still denied for 4 additional years.